The painting you are looking at right now was completed in 1533, and before you try to understand it, just look at it. Two men stand side by side, framed by heavy green curtains. They are dressed in the finest clothing the 16th century could produce: furs, silks, chains of gold. Between them sits a two-tiered shelf overflowing with objects: scientific instruments, books, a lute, a globe. Everything in this painting radiates power, wealth, and mastery. These are men who believe they have conquered the world. And yet, cutting diagonally across the bottom of the canvas, there is something wrong. A pale, stretched, impossible shape. It doesn't belong. It disrupts the perfect symmetry of the composition, like a crack in an otherwise immaculate surface. Holbein painted this work during a stay at the court of Henry VIII, and it stands today as one of the most technically ambitious and philosophically unsettling paintings ever made, not because of what it shows, but because of what it hides. The man on the left is Jean de Danville, the French ambassador to England. He was 29 years old when this portrait was painted. His black coat is trimmed with lynx fur, and around his neck hangs the Order of St. Michael, the highest chivalric honor in France. In his hand he holds a dagger, inscribed with his age, as if reminding us that time is passing, even as we look at him. The man on the right is Georges de Selve, Bishop of Lavaux. He was 25, remarkably young for a bishop, and a man of enormous intellectual reputation. A diplomat, a theologian, a scholar. His dark robe suggests a withdrawal from the spectacle surrounding him, and yet here he stands, willingly inside it. The two men were close friends. Dinterville had specifically requested that Selve join him in London during what had been a deeply difficult posting. England in 1533 was in the final stages of religious rupture. Henry VIII was severing the English Church from Rome in order to annul his marriage to Catherine of Aragon and marry Anne Boleyn. The political atmosphere was charged, volatile, and shot through with the quiet understanding that the world, as these men had known, it was ending. They are standing at the center of that storm, and Holbein knew it. Now look at what sits between them on that shelf. Every object was chosen with surgical precision. Together, they form an encyclopedic claim. We understand everything there is to understand about the world. On the upper shelf are instruments of the sky, a celestial globe, a quadrant, a polyhedral sundial capable of telling time in multiple cities at once. These are the tools of astronomy and navigation, of measuring the cosmos itself. On the lower shelf, the objects shift toward Earth, a terrestrial globe, an arithmetic book open to a page on division, a lute, a case of flutes, and, almost invisible, unless you know to look for it, a Lutheran hymn book, the arts and sciences of human civilization, heaven above, earth below. These two men present themselves as masters of both realms. But look at the lute. One of its strings is broken. In the visual language of the 16th century, a broken string was an unmistakable symbol of discord. It meant harmony had been shattered. In the context of 1533, with the Reformation tearing apart the unified body of Christian Europe, that single snapped string carries enormous weight. Everything else on that shelf represents order and mastery. The lute says, the order is breaking. Hans Holbein the Younger was born in Augsburg around 1497, the son of a painter. He trained in his father's workshop before settling in Basel, where he became one of the most sought-after portraitists in Northern Europe. He was precise, technically merciless, and capable of rendering fabric, flesh, and shadow with a realism that bordered on the uncanny. He painted Erasmus. He painted Thomas More. He painted the great humanist minds of his era and made them believe in their own permanence. His relationship with England was complicated. His first visit had gone brilliantly. But by the time he returned for his second extended stay in the early 1530s, Thomas More was under house arrest for refusing to endorse Henry's supremacy over the church. The intellectual world Holbein had entered with such optimism was fracturing. He adapted, he found new patrons, and eventually became the king's own painter, but he never stopped watching. And in the ambassadors, he he left behind something that suggests he understood perfectly what he was watching and what it meant. Now we have to talk about the shape. That distorted diagonal smear across the lower portion of the painting is one of the most famous technical achievements in the history of Western art. It is called an anamorphic projection, and when viewed from the correct angle from the far right, crouching low, looking obliquely across the surface, it snaps into perfect clarity, a human skull. Anamorphosis is a form of extreme perspective distortion, in which an image can only be correctly perceived from one specific vantage point. The technique existed in Holbein's time, but no one had ever deployed it at this scale, woven so deliberately into a painting of this ambition. The skull is a memento mori Latin for remember that you must die, a reminder that all of this, the furs, the instruments, the diplomatic titles, the mastery of heaven and earth, it ends the same way for everyone. But making the skull anamorphic is not just a technical flourish, it is an argument. The skull cannot be seen from the dominant frontal perspective from which the rest of the painting is designed to be viewed. To see it, you must step aside, lower yourself, and approach it obliquely. You must abandon the authoritative gaze. You must change your way of seeing. This is Holbein's point. The world as it appears from a position of power and confidence is a beautiful illusion. Truth, he is suggesting, requires a different angle. It requires the willingness to relinquish mastery and look at things from somewhere unexpected. If you like art videos like this one, please consider subscribing to my channel. And if I missed something, tell me in the comments. I read every single one. There is one more thing, hidden, almost entirely, in the upper left corner, partially obscured by the green curtain, barely visible, unless you know it is there, is a small silver crucifix. Think about what Holbein has constructed. In the center are the two ambassadors, wealth, knowledge, power. In the foreground is the skull mortality, inevitable, nullifying all of that. And in the corner, half swallowed by the curtain, is the figure of Christ on the cross. The crucifix is not at the center of this painting. It has been pushed aside by the instruments, the globes, the diplomatic titles, the entire magnificent apparatus of worldly ambition. And yet it is still there. Whether Holbein intended this as comfort or as critique, whether the crucifix is a genuine offer of something beyond death, or a bitter observation about how thoroughly faith had been marginalized by the political chaos of his moment, is a question the painting refuses to answer directly. It simply points, with quiet force, and leaves you to decide. To understand why this painting carries the weight it does, you need to understand exactly what was happening in England the year it was made. Henry VIII had spent 6 years trying to annul his marriage to Catherine of Aragon. Rome had refused. And so Henry, advised by Thomas Cromwell, had begun the systematic legal dismantling of papal authority over the English Church. In January 1533, he secretly married Anne Boleyn. In May, the newly appointed Archbishop Cranmer declared the first marriage void. In June, Anne was crowned queen. The break with Rome was complete. D'Interville, watching all of this as the French ambassador, was in an impossible position. France was officially Catholic, and yet France and England were allies. He had to maintain that alliance without endorsing what Rome considered an act of heresy. He was, by his own letters, miserable in London. He wrote repeatedly asking to be recalled. He described the posting as exile, and yet he stayed, because the diplomatic situation demanded it. It was during this period that he sat for Holbein. Every element of the painting becomes sharper in this light. The broken lute string, the Lutheran hymn book slipped quietly onto the shelf, the skull that can only be seen by abandoning the dominant perspective. These are not decorative choices. They are the responses of an extraordinarily intelligent painter to the specific, terrible moment he was working inside. Today, The Ambassadors hangs in the National Gallery in London. It is one of the most visited works in the collection, and the anamorphic skull has become something of a cultural celebrity, the kind of visual trick that travels well on screen. People come to see it, photograph it, and leave having experienced a puzzle. But the skull is not the point of the painting. The skull is the punchline. The point is, everything that surrounds it. Two young men at the height of their power, a world of knowledge arranged between them, a crucifix pushed to the corner, a broken string, a specific year and the specific catastrophe it belonged to. The skull means something only because of the context Holbein built around it. The Ambassadors is a painting about the limits of human mastery, about what knowledge cannot protect you from, about a world tearing itself apart along lines of faith and power, and two men standing in the middle of that tear, dressed magnificently, holding instruments of measurement, unable to measure what was coming. In that sense, it is not a painting of its time, it is a painting for every time. Thank you for making it to the end. If you've stood in front of this painting in London, I'd love to know what it felt like. And if there's a detail I missed, share it below. This is one of those works where there is always more to find.